Lewis Hamilton sets the pace on the opening day of the Italian Grand Prix. But it's Mercedes' teenage sensation, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, who grabs all the headlines, but for all the wrong reasons. From Racing News 365, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome back lead editor Ian Parks. Ian, I hope you have had a well-deserved holiday and you're back at work in Monza. I can think of worse places in the world to make a comeback from holiday.
Yeah, not bad, as you can see. Lovely time I've got, folks. I'm topping it up here with the amazing 30-degree sunshine we've got at Monza. Just searing temperatures. But yeah, lovely to be back. Great thanks, of course, to my Racing News 365 colleague, Aaron Deckers. You can see the picture behind me, or for any flyers looking inquiries down path. But the other categories, the Porsche category. Yeah, so great to be back. And as I say, thank you to Aaron for stepping in Zandvoort. But here I am. Great to be back here in Monza. And what a weekend, what a Friday we've had to start this Grand Prix weekend at the Temple of Speed.
And of course, the reason why it was such a Friday is one of the big stories going into today was to see Andrea Kimi Antonelli make his F1 debut in FP1. And unfortunately, it lasted all of about, I think it was maximum 10 minutes, had quite a heavy crash at Parabolica on his second hot lap. It brought an end, obviously, to his session, resulted in a red flag, impacted George Russell's day, because obviously it was Russell who sat out FP1 for Antonelli. There's been so much, obviously, discussion around Antonelli and how he could be the next big thing. You almost feel like the fact that he went out on soft tyres, that even Mercedes and Toto Wolff were kind of wanting to put on a show and be like, this is our young driver, this is going to be our star of the future. And what happens is he bins it at Parabolica.
You know what, it's so strange. You've got to think that they would have built him in slowly to the session to allow him to get up to speed with the W15. Bearing in mind, this is a car he'd not driven previously. His previous running has been in two-year-old machinery, because obviously when you're doing that kind of thing, when you're building up the driver, you're not allowed to use current specs. So this was the first time he'd sat behind the wheel of the W15. And as I say, you would expect, build him in gradually, let him find the pace. Monza, okay, a relatively easy circuit in terms of mastering the nuances of the track, despite what has been done to the track, quite obviously with the reprofiled curbs, made them much smoother, brand new surface, making that plenty much quicker with the new tarmac coming through. And as I say, just let him integrate himself slowly. Oh no, Mercedes opted soft tyre run, and fair play to him, he went straight to the top of the times. Brought him in. Second soft tyre run. Purple, first two sectors. Wow, this boy's brilliant. Bang, off, Parabolica. And as you rightly pointed out, you stole my line, although you did come up with it originally, in our pre-video discussion, that whilst they wanted Antonelli to set headlines, as you say, he has gone and set them for all the wrong reasons. Now, Toto Wolff, fortunately for us as media, did the main team principal session in between the two practices. And quite obviously, a lot of the questions he fielded was about Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Would this have any bearing on the likelihood? I say likelihood, it's a nailed on cast iron certainty, and we're almost certainly going to hear about it. I think tomorrow is going to be the confirmed announcement for Antonelli in the seat for 2025. Would it have any impact? How would this affect it? And Toto said, zero impact. You know, he'd rather much have a guy that can produce speed from the off than a guy that doesn't have that speed initially, because at least with one, they can help him learn and temper his shall we say, aggression on track, whereas the other, i.e. a Logan Sargent, for argument's sake, at Williams, that clearly didn't have the speed, and that's why he was axed in between these two Grand Prix, the Dutch last weekend and the Italian this weekend. James Vowles this morning made it quite clear that they'd give him every opportunity, and it just wasn't at it. At least with Kimi Antonelli, Mercedes know they have got a driver who is quite clearly at it, and it's just that tempering of youth, shall we say, that youthful exuberance But still, why the question mark? Why would you allow him to go out, bang, bang, soft, soft, set the headline times, rather than just easing him into things gradually and potentially allowing the soft tyre runs once he'd fully got up to speed with, as I say, the nuances of the track and learning a little bit more about the car. As I say, tremendous start to the weekend. Let's hope it continues with the right kind of bangs for all the right reasons over the course of this Grand Prix weekend, because of course we did have another big bang, FP2, Kevin Magnussen going into a barrier out of the second Lesmo, but we'll come to that as well in a minute.
And obviously the big thing with the Antonelli crash is obviously there was then significant damage to George Russell's W15, which obviously meant that Russell missed the first few minutes of FP2 because they were still just doing the finishing pieces to the car. And then, of course, Russell then lost a further 10 minutes later in the session because of that crash for Kevin Magnussen. I think Russell today has only had probably a maximum of 40, maybe 45 minutes at a push to understand. 30, there you go. 30, I was wrong, my bad. But anyway, he's only had 30 minutes then to learn the reprofiling of some of the corners, in particular, obviously the first and second corner, the new curbs, the new surface. There's been so much change at Monza. There seems to be new gravel strips, in several really interesting places. For Russell, this is an immediate setback for his weekend, given that actually, based on Lewis Hamilton topping FP2 at a time that was 0.6 quicker than what topped free practice 2 last season, it's clear Mercedes do have a competitive car this weekend, but Russell now goes into Saturday kind of still needing to learn all these new features about Monza.
Yeah, just doing the math off the top of my head, I'm just going to correct 30 and state it was actually 26 minutes that he had.
To be exact.
He lost 22 minutes in the garage because obviously they were doing the running repairs, and then there was 12 minutes of track action loss with the Magnussen red flag, so that's 34 minutes in total, so he only had 26 minutes. Going to temper a couple of things slightly there with what you just said, Nick. Got to remember, this is Monza. It's not Singapore. This isn't a 26-corner layout track where every single minute is required in practice to fully get up to speed. This has only got a handful of worthwhile corners at the end of the day. So Monza is arguably the easiest circuit to learn through the practice sessions. Yes, of course, he would have wanted every minute that he could possibly have gained in that car, really to get up to, as I say, the nuances of this reprofiled slightly circuit with these curbs, with the tarmac. Another underlying factor with regard to FP2 and Lewis Hamilton on top is that the time of the session was 5 o'clock local time in the afternoon. Qualifying the race start 2 hours early on Saturday and Sunday. The temperatures will be that much higher in terms of the track temperatures. Air temperature's about the same, 34 degrees, FP1, FP2. It's been that consistent pretty much throughout the daytimes here at Monza. Track temperatures, as I say, slightly different with the setting sun. So we had 9 degrees difference at the start of FP1, 9 degrees lower compared to the start of FP2. That might have played into Mercedes' hand a little bit with regard to the time that Lewis Hamilton set. Additionally, good point for Lewis though, he was on the new spec floor. Just to help people out there, Mercedes have been trying to work out why their pace was and their performance was so off in Zandvoort. So going into FP1, they gave Antonelli the new spec floor. Again, another underlying factor as to his performance there and what happened with his OS. Lewis was on the old spec. Going into FP2, Lewis then had the new spec. George was on the old spec. So they're just trying to find, as I say, if there's any underlying difference between these two floors to see if it had any mitigating factors to what happened in Zandvoort. So got to bring these things into play. Lewis at the end of the day, headline time at the top of FP2 was a good time, 0.003 of a second quicker than Lando Norris in second. The McLaren's looking good. Lewis also did get a bit of a tow from Aston Martin's Lance Stroll, but we all know with Monza, you get a tow here, particularly in qualifying, that is going to be absolutely crucial. We're going to see a lot of potential slipstreaming throughout qualifying, I'm sure, because every driver knows if you can get that, that's going to play enormous dividends with regards to your qualifying time.
Which means qualifying will likely be an absolute mess, in particular in Q1. You mentioned the McLaren. Obviously, there are so many eyes on them going into this weekend because of just how dominant Lando Norris was in Zandvoort. Sergio Perez on Thursday in the press conference said that McLaren are now the benchmark. And you kind of get that feeling this weekend as well. We're yet to really see the true pace of any of the teams because of the disruptions today. But as you mentioned there, Norris, just 0.03 of a second off Lewis Hamilton. Oscar Piastri in P4. Both McLaren drivers looking very settled already. Is it fair to say they're potentially the favourites, or do you think we need to learn a bit more first before we can say that?
Yeah, we're going to need to learn quite a bit more, particularly through FP3. And the reason for that is because we didn't really see what Red Bull has got to offer in FP2. Max Verstappen topped FP1, but, as I say, that was all about getting to learn this slightly reprofiled Monza, as I talked about previously. Max's only soft tyre run in FP2 saw him complete the first two sectors, looked reasonable, and then he made a mistake going into Parabolica, car twitched, and he had to abort the lap. So and that was the only soft tyre run that he managed to do, because obviously we have the Kevin Magnussen crash, and that then completely disrupted his program. So we've not really seen what Max has got to offer. With regard to Checo Perez, his own session as well was, like George, very disruptive. Yes, he ran in FP1. FP2, however, he was 25 minutes late getting out onto the track because the team had to do a gearbox change to such an extent that it required both his engineers and those from Max's side of the garage to help work on the car to help then get him out on the track. But he was also disrupted by that Magnussen crash. Yes, he did do a soft tyre run, ended up in 15th place, but I don't think that was anywhere near representative of what we are likely to see in FP3 and primarily in qualifying. I got the impression that they were just doing a bit more of a higher fuel run on those soft tyres than anything we're going to see for qualifying. He ended up 15th, Max 14th, Red Bull nowhere near representative of what we can expect. Helmut Marko in particular was talking about the fact that coming out of FP1, that Red Bull did look a little more settled with its car compared to the problems that we saw and being so far off the pace of Zandvoort with regard to Max, of course, and that gap in qualifying to Lando, a third of a second, and that 22.9 second gap, biggest margin victory that we've seen this season compared to Max to Lando at the end of the race on Sunday. So yeah, a lot for Red Bull to do, a lot for Red Bull to learn through FP3, that's for sure, going at qualifying.
And something very interesting about Red Bull that also Perez said, who was in fine form on Thursday, is that Red Bull have had these balance issues with the RB20 the last few rounds, and that really cost them in Zandvoort. Sergio Perez said that ahead of this weekend, Red Bull has finally understood where the problem is coming from, and obviously it's just a matter of time to see how quickly they can fix it. So obviously, who knows, maybe we'll have upgrades for them in the coming races. One team that has introduced significant upgrades for this weekend, their home weekend, is Ferrari, who are a team who actually tend to go quite well here. Carlos Sainz was on pole position here 12 months ago. They've let us down a bit with the livery, let's be honest. I think after seeing the race suits, we thought they were going to unleash something black and yellow, radical. Not to be. But this is a big weekend for Ferrari. They've introduced a whole heap of upgrades because they've accepted they went the wrong direction with the last set introduced in Spain. There's a bit of pressure on them this weekend to ensure that these upgrades do work.
Yeah, I was speaking to John Clare. We were fortunate enough to have a chat with him in the show and tell that took place prior to FP1. And he was explaining that the upgrades that they brought here, and as you say, it's quite a significant package. It's front wing, rear wing, floor, lots of bits and pieces on that car this weekend. It was not so much, it was actually, sorry, just to correct that, it was a response to the issues that they had with regard to the package that was introduced in Barcelona. The package that was introduced in Barcelona was brought forward slightly on what we saw in Imola with the first real upgrade package there, and that performed so well. They brought that package to Spain. It didn't work. Lots of bouncing on that car, as we've seen. Charles and Carlos have complained quite notably over a number of races that they've been suffering significant bouncing. Now, ordinarily, a team over the course of the season will build up with its upgrade packages. They're always in the pipeline. The one will build on top of the other to eventually improve that performance over the course of the season. On this occasion, this particular package is not necessarily built on the Spanish GP package. It's more in response to correcting the issues that occurred from that Spanish GP package. And of course, you mentioned about the fact in your build-up to this question that Ferrari has always gone well here. They have to. It's their home race, way more so than Imola. Yes, that's a significant course for them. Monza, however, is the one where they realise they have to perform. And whilst there is a budget cap in place and they have to balance those upgrades for the course of the season, Job Clear did at least state that for Monza, they always just have to spend that little bit more to pull something that little bit extra out the bag because they want to put on a show for these fans. And at the moment, things aren't looking too bad. Carlos and Charles in a reasonably good place. I do think they are going to be in the mix in qualifying. It is going to be a fascinating qualifying session because coming out of Friday, we've really not got a fully accurate read as to who is where. FP3 is going to be fascinating. I think qualifying, as you've mentioned it could very well be a mess, given everything that we know what goes on around here with the slick streaming, with the car park that comes down that long straight leading into Parabolic, of those drivers waiting to start their hot laps. We've seen quite a few incidents there in the past. Could we see something like that again? I've got a suspicion we will. As I say, this is going to be one of the most fascinating qualifying sessions of the year, particularly as we really do not know who has got the edge at the moment.
The underlying message there to our audience is do not miss Saturday. 2 more quick talking points before we do our predictions. You've had a few weeks away from them, and annoyingly, Aaron actually in Zandvoort, for every prediction he made, they were correct every single time, which I don't quite know how he's done that. But anyways, let's talk about Williams, because obviously you had quite an exciting first day back from holiday, and obviously it was the same day that the Logan Sargent news fell, and obviously him being axed. We kind of all had the feeling it was going to happen after what was a huge crash in Zandvoort. However, what we weren't expecting is the driver that's replaced him. I say he's now a full-time F1 driver, kind of a semi-full-time F1 driver, given he'll give the car to Carlos Sainz next season. But obviously, Williams opted against the likes of Mick Schumacher, for example, and they've gone for their Academy F2 driver, Franco Colapinto. An interesting choice. And actually, you mentioned at the start of the show that, Mercedes didn't ease Kimi Antonelli into the session. Williams did ease Colapinto, and actually P17 across FP1 and FP2, and actually in FP2 just a couple of attempts off Alex Albon. Not a bad first day for the Argentine driver.
Yeah, he did well. Just to give people a bit of a background, as I mentioned earlier in the show, James Vowles did a media session earlier on Friday, which was of great benefit to us, of course. And obviously, one of the first questions he was asked was, why didn't you go for Mick? What were the problems with Mick? What does Franco have? A complete rookie, compared to Mick, who at least had 2 seasons. Yes, okay, they were very difficult 2 seasons to go past, but it was a back of the grid car, as we all know, and any driver worth their salt would have had difficulties with that car. James is very honest, and it's one of the things that I've always appreciated in listening to James Vowles every time I've conducted a press conference with him. He is very, very honest. And whilst he did concede that Mick has improved as a driver ever since he left Haas, acknowledging that, of course, as I've mentioned, they were 2 really difficult years at Haas. He felt that, and to quote unquote him, Mick is a good driver, not a special driver. So from that perspective, and given the money that they have invested in Franco over the years, building him up through their academy program, they felt the bottom line at the end of the day was, okay, we might as well give Franco an opportunity just to at least see, has he got what it takes for the future? And if he can prove himself, a little bit like Liam Lawson did last season with the team that was then known as AlphaTauri, now known as VCarb RB, whichever name you prefer, he proved himself. And of course, we all know he's waiting in the wings, just waiting for that phone call from Helmut Marko to say, you're in now. It could very well be the same for Franco Colapinto. If he performs well over these 9 Grand Prix, there's no reason to say that there are still a couple of seats available. Could a team go for him for next year? I doubt it, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. And one of the things that Franco has, if he can prove himself in the cockpit, first of all, is that he will have an enormous welter of sponsors behind him. already, within the space of a few days this week, Williams has confirmed that 2 South American sponsors will be on the car for the next race in Baku. And James Vowles has turned around and said that his phone has been ringing off the hook these past few days with a plethora of other companies wanting to get involved and have their name on that car in association with Franco. So there's a lot of upside to Franco Colapinto off the track for any potential team. We're now going to see, what he's got, what he can do on the track over these next 9 Grand Prix, and whether he is a driver worth investing in for another team, if not Williams, somewhere further down the line. Because as we know with Williams, they've got Alex and Carlos confirmed in the car for the next 2 seasons at least, both drivers. So for Franco, it's going to be a long wait with Williams. Otherwise, if it's not F1 with another team, there are other programs that Williams are looking at to help enhance his motorsport future.
Well, if there's anything we've learned, it's that the combination of speed and money normally works quite well in F1, so the best of luck to you, Franco. Just a very final quick talking point, because it has been, as you mentioned, a quite fascinating day. So many storylines, and this one is from Renault. And obviously there was a peaceful protest today. It was by no means aggressive. It was very peaceful. You went and saw it yourself from the Renault engine program. We've obviously heard the reports that there's chances that they could be a customer team Alpine from 2026 when the new regs are introduced. And it's fair to say that Renault and the staff there in the engine department aren't happy about it.
It's a slight understatement, Nick, in fairness to you fella.
Yeah, slight understatement, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big understatement. They are, let's put it this way, furious about it. Renault, as we all know, has a long history in Formula One. Viry-Châtillon, well-known, well-respected factory over the years. It has 334 staff at that particular factory. Now, they were informed at the end of July that basically there will be no Renault Formula One engine on the grid in 2026. That is despite the hundreds of millions of euros that have already been invested in that program for 2026. That is despite the fact that that engine is currently running on the dyno, which, to give people just a heads up on that, that means that that team or that power unit program is far advanced if it's already on the dyno, even 18 months as we are now away from that first Grand Prix in 2026. So, yes, they're here protesting. 100 of that 334 strong staff spent their own money, hired minibuses, bought tickets for the grandstands, one end at Parabolica, one end at the other top end of the circuit as well. I spoke to one of their chief representatives, one of their chief union representatives today, and he was basically outlining why they were here. They just want to have their voice heard, quite honestly. They've, listened to senior management. They've not yet heard from Luca Di Maio, is the man who has made this call. He's the Renault Group CEO, for people who don't know the name. He's the guy, yes, along with the other top brass around him, who's ultimately made this call that Renault will not be on the grid in 2026 as a power unit manufacturer. So, as I say, they've got banners, they were wearing T-shirts, they just want support, they just want their voice heard. Just to give you a little bit of an idea as well, all of that 334 strong workforce, they have been guaranteed jobs in other projects. But they also want to see the Renault program continue in Formula One, given its long history. The 334 strong workforce and the 100 people that are here, they are fighting for all the people within the customer programs, because of course it's not just about what goes on in the factory. Any power unit team has lots and lots of suppliers that help it over the course of any power unit program develop its system. So there are hundreds of people whose jobs are on the line because they don't have contracts with Renault specifically, as the employees do. That's why the Renault employees' future is guaranteed, not the customer employees, shall we say. So for them, it's a different picture. So it's a twofold thing that they want their voice through. A, just simply, they want the Renault name to continue to have that history on the grid, to carry on the good work that's been done so far with this 18 months, 2 years that's so far been invested into this project, but also B, to preserve the jobs of all these customers that help produce the power unit. So yeah, good chat with the guy. Whether he will get his wish, I don't think it's really going to change anything, in all honesty. But hopefully they at least have that sit down with Luca Di Maio. That is the very least they deserve to get out of this. And at least hear it from him as to why the things are changing so drastically for Alpine. And it's more than likely going to be a customer team in 2026 with, as we all know, Mercedes as supplier.
Which is a big shame because, as you mentioned, Renault is so historic in Formula One. And of course, we wish everyone at Vieri obviously the best of luck. Ian, it's been a lengthy F1 update, but you know what? It's been an eventful Friday, and I think your return as well warrants it. But to finish things off, a bold prediction for qualifying. I'm going to go first. Short and sweet. Lando Norris on pole with Lewis Hamilton in second. An all-British front row. Your turn.
I think that we are really going to see the Ferraris full in the mix. They've thrown the kitchen sink, I would say, at this car, and I got a good impression from what I saw in practice. As I say, really difficult to fully judge, but I'm gonna I can't say who, but I'm banking on a Ferrari on the front row of the grid. I don't think they're going to grab pole. Don't think the car is quite good enough for that, but we're going to see a Ferrari on the front row of the grid to at least give the adoring Tifosi something to cheer about. And I'm going to say Franco Colapinto will not be on the back of the grid.
Two very good, just a little nice one. Two very good predictions. And of course, those watching this video, be sure to let us know your predictions for qualifying in the comment section below. From myself and Ian, we will see you on Saturday after qualifying for the next episode of the RacingNews365.com F1 updates. See you later.
It's great to be back, folks. Take care.